So, guys, how was that All-Star Race? Yeah, I heard it was, kinda good? Yeah, it was really bad. So in case you guys are unaware, yeah, this year's All-Star Race was arguably one of the worst of all time. What was initially just a boring Texas snooze fest just turned out to be one of the stupidest officiating calls of all time and a near PR disaster. As Ryan Blaney, literally 100 feet away from the start-finish line, would have the caution thrown out on him for a crash that wasn't even happening. Blaney would get the memo way too late as he was already starting to take down his window net, tried desperately to put the thing back up, and somehow would get the thing back up under a really controversial way, and would come back around to win the race. I say near PR disaster because if Ryan Blaney did not win that race, we probably would have rioted. But despite the race ending with the driver we all wanted to see win, everyone's been kind of all over NASCAR with its really weird rule changes and how they handle the situation. But I'm not here to talk about the Hurdle Blaney situation. I'm here to talk about the All-Star Race in general. What was once a prestigious race has kind of turned into a hollow shell of its former glory within the past 10 years. And the crazy thing? NASCAR knows that because they've been trying desperately to make the All-Star Race relevant again. Every single year there's always this new strange gimmick, like the back number placements in 2020 and moving the race to Texas in 2021, and this year with the pit changes, it's just been failure after failure after failure. Basically, the All-Star is at its lowest point possible. It's gotten so bad that NASCAR fans are even considering if the All-Star Race should even stay on the schedule. But what's my opinion? Should NASCAR keep the All-Star Race? My answer is yes. But it needs a major overhaul. But before I get into how I would fix the All-Star Race, I want to take a look at what I think are the 3 biggest problems to the All-Star Race nowadays. Then once all those 3 problems are addressed, it's going to be easier for you to understand my decisions and how I would fix these problems. So, without further ado, here are the 3 biggest problems I have with the All-Star Race. When you think of the All-Star Race, what do you think it is? If you judged it by its name, you'd think it'd just be the best of the best duking out for victory. Take all the best drivers currently in the sport and putting them all together for one heck of a show. And when the All-Star Race first began in the mid-80s, that was exactly what it was. Take all the previous winners from the past season and make them fight over a big cash prize. It truly was the best of the best, as the original field had some of the biggest stars during its day. Bill Elliott, Cale Yarborough, Dale Earnhardt, Harry Gant, Neil Bonnet, and of course the winner, Darrell Waltrip, among others. But over the years, NASCAR has opened up for more drivers to be in the show, which initially isn't really a bad idea. In 1987, they added the Open, which added a wild card to the final event, which isn't a bad idea, honestly. I mean, in 1996, Michael Waltrip, that one wild card, went on to win the show entirely. But over the years, the All-Star Race, which was initially a pretty exclusive event, became more and more inclusive to the rest of the field. Now initially, it was a pretty okay idea, since usually there would only be maybe 6 or 7 winners throughout the season. But then once NASCAR started adding winners from the past season and the current season, it sort of doubled the field. And with all those extra provisionals and more drivers being allowed from the Open, it got really bad to the point where we were in 2022. The All-Star Race this year had 24 drivers in it. The Open had just 16. Let me go ahead and stand back for you real quick and just remind you about what I just said. The All-Star Race had more drivers in it than the Open. You starting to see where I'm coming with this? The All-Star Race just has way too many drivers in it. Sure, it's still got some top stars in it and does show a lot of the biggest drivers. Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, they're all still there, but we also got drivers like Michael McDowell. What was once initially the best of the best battling it out is essentially just a regular NASCAR race after a big crash. NASCAR expanding the field like this took the All-Star out of the All-Star Race. It's got the top stars in the sport, sure, but it has just as many mid-tier drivers as well. And especially since this year, there were more All-Star drivers than there were drivers trying to get into the All-Star Race, it really shows that NASCAR is being a little too inclusive on what should be the best of the best. and NASCAR should really tone it down, because it's really starting to become a big problem with the All-Star Race. When the All-Star Race first began, it was just one 70-lap event, with your starting position in the event being determined on how well you did in the past year, with the champion, Dale Earnhardt from the season before, starting on the pole. A few years later, they'd add stage racing, which will mean all the cars are bunched back up together and let loose again, which was pretty fun. But the mentality was the same. It was just a simple race with the starting positions determined by how well you did the previous year. Now let's take a look at how well NASCAR's been sticking with that mentality.
You think this is funny?
In a cosmic sort of way, yes.
Well, Mr. Funny Man, is this how you get your sick kicks?
What? It's just the All-Star Race for...
Oh my goodness!
Alright, here we go. We're gonna do a little bit of a rundown of the All-Star format. Okay, so there's 2 practices, 15 to 20 minutes for all the cars in the Open and the All-Star Race. Then we got 1 lap qualifying. It's usually 2 laps, but it's just 1 lap. And then it's reverse order points, top 8s advance to a head-to-head elimination style bracket. What's the elimination style bracket? Oh, it's just a simple 4-tire pit stop, and then you do a whole race around the track. And then whoever finishes first in that race advances to the next spot until we determine the top 8. Alright, you guys got that? Okay, hopefully you do, because then we move on to the Open. Alright, we haven't even got to the racing yet. Alright, so it's a 20-lap stage, 2 20-lap stages, and then 1 final 10-lap stage, with the 3 winners advancing onto the final event. So the winner of first stage 1 advances, the winner of stage 2 advances, and the final stage advances. Alright, I know you might be a little bit confused right now, but we haven't even gotten to the main event. Alright, let's go to the main event. Stage 1, it's just a 25-lap event. Whoever wins that will start on the pole for the 4th stage. Then we got for stage 2, another 25 laps. Whoever wins that will start second. And then we got another pit stop competition. The same as before? No, it's just a 4-tire, everyone's gotta go do a 4-tire pit stop with the shortest time in pit road will win the pit crew award and will start 4th in the final event. 4th, I thought you'd say start 3rd. No, the winner of stage 3 will start 3rd. Then we got stage 3, we'll start the final stage. That's a 50-lap event. With the winner who getting $1 million. And if there's no natural caution between 15 and 25 laps of the final stage, NASCAR will call a competition caution, and the race must finish under green. Normally the next flag ends the race, but not this time, because screw you, I guess. Alright, if you understood how anything just said, you have a big enough brain to cure cancer, let's be real. What was once a really simple and easy to understand race is so confusing your head's gonna explode just trying to think about it. If I, a NASCAR fan for nearly 20 years, can barely understand the format, imagine how a fan that has never seen a NASCAR race up to this point would understand it. I would feel so bad for them. And NASCAR's doing all this confusing gimmicks and stuff on purpose, because like I mentioned before, NASCAR knows the All-Star Race is on the down and down. So in response, they add so many bells and whistles to it to try to make it look relevant. And in reality, it doesn't. It just makes it look more confusing and blows up in their face. And the crazy thing is, once you finally memorize how this format works and understand how it works, NASCAR's gonna come up next year and just dump a whole new set of rules. This time with even more crazier gimmicks. At the rate we're going, we're probably gonna have a talent show in next year's All-Star Race. And sure, some of it is pretty interesting. The pit stop challenges were a neat concept, going back to when NASCAR did that before. But why not have that as a separate event? Why do you gotta taint the All-Star Race with it? And why are you using it to determine qualifying positions? Larson proved this was a bad idea when his car stalled out. I paid a ticket to the All-Star Race to watch racing, not pit stops. But just like every other decision in NASCAR's past, i.e. playoffs, NASCAR is doing it for artificial entertainment. I can already hear the loyalists that defend the playoff like it's a cult say, oh, it's just entertaining. It doesn't matter if you like it, it's entertaining to me. But I'm gonna go ahead and stop right there, because if I keep talking about the problem with NASCAR creating artificial entertainment and improving the product on the track, we're gonna be here for 9 years. Bottom line, the All-Star Race format is just way too confusing for anyone. Depending if you're a die-hard fan since the 1990s or a new fan just trying to figure out what all the fuss is about, you're not going to understand this format. Alright, let's get on to the last point. Since the beginning of the All-Star Race, the majority of races have been held at Charlotte Motor Speedway in Charlotte, North Carolina. This 1.5 mile track was chosen as the spot for the All-Star Race from its inception until 2019, with one race in 1986 being held at Atlanta. The reason it was chose was because it was right at the same spot as the Coke 600, which was the week after. And, well, it was a pretty good idea, since we had some pretty exciting racing there, and the racing was usually pretty competitive. Up until the mid-2010s, we saw some pretty iconic moments at this track, where races were really, really competitive. It essentially made the All-Star Race worth watching, pretty much. And then NASCAR decided to take it to Texas, which is arguably one of the worst tracks in the sport. Okay, let me get this straight. I am aware why they moved it from Charlotte. The main reason they moved it from Charlotte was mainly due to COVID. In 2020, Charlotte was still a relatively big COVID hotspot by the time the All-Star Race kicked in, so they decided to move it to Bristol, which isn't bad, but it's not really the best place, I'd really say, for an All-Star Race. Once 2021 came around and COVID started to tone down a little bit, instead of NASCAR decided to return back to where it was before at Charlotte, they decided to throw it to Texas for some reason. Now, if this was 1999, I would have been okay with this, since Texas is a really huge track, and back in the day, it was still pretty okay. But nowadays, it's one of the worst tracks on the circuit! Built in 1997 to attract everyone in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to NASCAR and a giant middle finger to North Wilkesboro, initially, it was pretty revolutionary. It had one of the biggest seating capacities in the entire sport, and with top-of-the-line amenities, making it a pretty decent fan experience for the time. But that was really all it was really good for. The product of the track was a complete disaster from the start, with 2 reconfigurations before the new millennium. And once all the dust settled, we got some pretty okay racing. Not the best, but okay. Sort of like a mid thing. And then 2017, they decided to decrease the banking. And thus, racing got even worse. And after they tried to save the track with PJ1, not only did it not fix the problem, but IndyCar racing, which also raced at Texas, got even worse. If you have to put PJ1 on the track, you already have a pretty crummy track. If that doesn't fix the problem, it's a lost cause. And now that's all said and done, it makes perfect sense why NASCAR decided to move the All-Star Race to Texas. Not because it's a good track, but they wanted to make Texas feel like it has a purpose, when in reality, it doesn't. And because of that, the product on the track for the All-Star Race had a huge downgrade. Why else would they add the competition caution at the end of the race? It's because they're trying desperately to fabricate an exciting finish. Hopefully in the final turn, the leaders wreck each other and then the third place driver goes on to win the race, then they'll have a good enough excuse to have racing there forever and ever and ever. Come to think of it, I think that's the reason why they threw the caution out despite the fact Blaney was right in front of the line, to create some artificial finish to make it look exciting. Instead, they got the exact same finish they would have done anyways, but with an angry fan base mad at NASCAR for their horrible decisions. NASCAR moving the All-Star Race to Texas was one of the worst decisions they've ever made. After COVID was all said and done, they could have easily moved right back to Charlotte and kept racing at an exciting track. Instead, they decided that Texas needed to have a purpose again and moved it to a track that could barely put on a show. Texas shouldn't have the All-Star Race, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say it, we should never race at Texas in general anymore. Texas NASCAR fans have COTA now, which is a far better track, so really there's no reason to keep racing at Texas. So in a desperate attempt to save both the All-Star Race and Texas, they combined 2 of the worst things imaginable, and we got boring racing for the past few years. Man, screw Texas Motor Speedway. All my homies hate Texas Motor Speedway. Alright, so that was the 3 biggest problems I had with the All-Star Race. A field that's way too big, a format that's way too confusing, and a track that's way too pathetic. So now it's time for my personal opinion on how I would fix this. So this last part is going to be how I would fix this race. If NASCAR assigned me to fix the All-Star Race and return it to its former glory, how would I do it? Well, I've already addressed the 3 biggest problems I have with it, so here's how I'd fix it. First problem, field's just way too big. It's got pretty much half the field for what should be the best of the best. So let's fix that. The current All-Star Race allows the following: the race winners from this season, the race winners from last season, past All-Star winners, past champions, the 3 open winners, and the fan vote. In my fantasy All-Star Race, in order to get in from winning a race, you must have won a race from this season, from the Clash up to the All-Star Race. Past All-Star winners and past champions are also still allowed in this event. And to condense the lineup for the All-Star Race a little bit more, I'm gonna do this. Yeah, this might be a controversial decision, but I'm just going to completely can the All-Star Open. It's supposed to be the best of the best, and honestly, while it is a good idea to see some wild cards in the event, I think we have enough crazy races nowadays that we'll see a wild card or two in the All-Star race anyways. And while I was a little hesitant at first, I decided to keep the fan vote. It's pretty popular, and I still like to see the fans have some sort of decision on who gets in. But to add some a little bit more excitement and suspense, we're going to keep the fan vote winner mysterious until they're revealed at the All-Star race. They did that before in the early 2010s, so why not bring it back? It's suspenseful and exciting to find out who won it instead of just announcing right away who won it. And of course, I'm still going to keep past champions and past All-Star winners as well. So if we ran with this field in 2022, these would have been the drivers that would have been the All-Star race. Joey Logano, Austin Cindric, Kyle Larson, Alex Bowman, Chase Briscoe, William Byron, Ross Chastain, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Kurt Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski, and Eric Jones, who won the fan vote.
Also Kevin Harvick. I definitely mentioned Kevin Harvick.
So the field went from 24 to
15.
which is a pretty big downgrade and really starts to restrict the drivers from mid-pack to the drivers you usually see up at the front. So that fixed the first problem. Now let's move on to the second problem. The very confusing format. So let's make it a lot more simpler. For where you start in the race, it depends on where you are in the points. So for the All-Star race this year, the front row would consist of
Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney,
since they're first and second in points. No more of these stupid gimmicks like the pit stop challenges. I know people really like them, but in reality, it's just a dumb gimmick and just adds to confusion. And then for the race format, I'm gonna make it super simple and super bare bones. 100 laps, halftime, 100 laps. I know, it sounds really boring, but I'd rather watch just basic racing than just seeing NASCAR throw everything at the wall and nothing sticking. And that's exactly what the All-Star race was initially. There was no weird gimmicks, it was just racing. And that's just the way I like it. Now I know what you might be thinking right now. A 200 lap event at Texas is a really long race. And to that I say, who said we were racing at Texas? Now let's move on to the final problem. Racing at Texas. In my crazy All-Star race, I completely Thanos-snapped Texas Motor Speedway out of existence. Texas NASCAR fans have CODA now, and if that's not enough for them, I think I have a neat little idea I'll talk about in another video. So that means we're returning to Charlotte, right? Nope, not that either. But didn't you just say earlier that Charlotte had some pretty exciting racing? Yeah, but at this point, the All-Star race is going to need a lot to revive it, and I don't think Charlotte's going to be enough. So where do I think we should go? Well, the All-Star race is the best of the best, taking the drivers that are the best at what they do and making them compete against each other. You know what other thing does that? The Olympics. An event where the best of the best around the world in every sport come together and compete for the gold. Now, is there a specific venue that was created for the Olympics that we could race at? Any place that we've been in the past that would be perfect for the All-Star? Yeah, it's the LA Coliseum. Now that 200 lap event doesn't look so big now, does it? I mean, this year's Clash was arguably one of the best I've seen in years, so the LA Coliseum is a fantastic venue. And I feel like it'll be even better for the All-Star race. And this isn't something I just came up with. When the Clash of the Coliseum was first announced, I said that I think it would be better off for the All-Star race anyways. And without all this excess stuff like the Open and the pit stop challenges, I feel like we can get through this race relatively quickly. However, I did still decide to put the race at 200 instead of the 150 we ran at the Clash, because I felt like 150 was just way too short. And then of course, with that halftime part I mentioned earlier, in between the 100 laps, we can have a little bit of a halftime concert. Something a little bit better than what we had at the Clash, because that was kind of awkward. But who would I recommend for the All-Star Race halftime concert? A perfect fit for the All-Star Race. Somebody that would be perfect for the All-Star Race. Somebody for the All-Star Race. Somebody. Yeah, I know it's stupid, but wouldn't it be so perfect and honestly pretty hilarious if Smash Mouth played the halftime concert at the All-Star Race? Because I would. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So there you have it. How I would fix the All-Star Race. Limit the field, make the race a lot simpler, and move it to the Coliseum. Now I know what you may be thinking now. What about the Clash? While it would be strange having two identical races initially, I feel like we could have the Clash and the All-Star race work in conjunction with each other. Like I already mentioned, my crazy All-Star race idea will have every winner from the Clash up to the All-Star race. For the Clash, I feel like we can do the exact opposite from every winner since the All-Star Race until the last race at Phoenix. But since we're racing the All-Star Race at the Coliseum now, where would I move the Clash? What would be the races up to the All-Star Race? Well, I think I got a nice idea, and some pretty bold ideas as well.